to do my speech over there.
Okay, we're standing by. Cross the line. Thank you.
Go through that again, but welcome, everybody. Good to see you all. I'll just read this statement first to start off with our usual question about recording. This meeting is being recorded, broadcast on the Town of Barnstable's Government Access Channel in accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30A and Section 20. The chair must inquire whether anyone is recording this meeting, and if so, to make their presence known. I think that's 10 years straight of. Meeting will be replayed on Xfinity Channel 8 or High Definition Channel 1072. It may also be accessed via the Government Access Channel live video on demand archives on the Town of Barnstable's website. Okay, with that, we'll move on to roll call. Start to my left.
Is it on? I think it is.
Yeah.
Renee King.
Maureen Piccioni.
Bill Carey.
Pete Sampu.
Gordon Starr.
Bill Monroe.
Hannah Lawrence, Sandy Neck Assistant Park Manager.
Donna Bragg.
Thanks, everybody. Okay, we'll act on the minutes from January, since we don't have any from February. Anybody have any comments or additions or subtractions to propose on the minutes? Otherwise, I'll look for someone to make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor of approving the minutes of January 8th?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carried. Thanks, everybody. Okay. The only thing, under notes from the chair, the only thing I had to say is we still don't have any information on the vacancy yet. I've spoken to Chris a couple times, Chris Clark about it a couple times because she's on the appointments committee. And I guess they're trying to prioritize some of the committees that maybe have a bit more to do with licensing and or regulatory things. So it's kind of going slow. So I haven't heard anything. So I have no idea where the process is at the moment. So I'm assuming it's going to be months, probably at this rate before we get an appointment done. So we'll move then to correspondence. Hannah, you going to do that?
Nothing new. I think we've got the letter in our new business to carry over.
Okay, staff report.
We're going to go out of order.
Oh, yeah, sorry. That's good. It's good to have someone here to keep me.
That's why
So
I'm here.
we're honored tonight to have another Eagle Scout who's her potential Eagle Scout, who's going to, Jack, who's going to propose another project to the board for, we're going to take this out of order so these guys can get going. Wants to propose another project. We love Eagle Scout projects. I think it's, I was saying to Jack earlier, it's great to see young people getting involved like this and spending a few less hours on their computers and phones and a little bit more, getting involved with the community. So we love these projects and we're looking forward to hearing from Jack as to what he's proposing. So Jack, why don't you come up to the microphone and just introduce yourself, and over to you.
Hello, I'm Jack Bete.
Grab a seat.
Have a seat,
Grab
buddy.
a seat.
Oh, down the end. Come on, you're running this thing now.
We'll be able to see your eyes when we ask these tough questions. So.
All right.
That right there is my Eagle Scout project proposal for Sandy Neck. It's going to be to put an Osprey pole in, and it's by me, Troop 54 Centerville, Cape and Islands Council. So what I plan to do, so for my project, I plan to construct and install an Osprey pole at Sandy Neck. And along with that, I also plan on making informational signage and installing it at the overlook pole. What is an osprey? So that's the bird. Osprey.
It's a bird.
Ospreys are seen over shorelines, patrolling waterways, and standing in their stick nests. These large hawks do well around humans and have had an increase in numbers following the ban on the pesticide DDT. They're found in areas such as Sandy Neck, where they can fish and hunt over a large area. Ospreys migrate throughout the air. So these are the seasons when they arrive and leave. And when they arrive is mid-April, and they leave around August to mid-September. They like to nest in high places at around 20 to 100 feet above the ground in altitude. They like space, so their nests need to be 460 feet apart from each other. And they nest right here on Cape Cod. So nesting sites for ospreys. The one on the right is just a picture of ospreys in a nest. And then the one on the left is where they like to be on a map of America. America. Department of Natural Resources in Sandy Neck. As most of you probably know, Sandy Neck is a beach park, and it's great for like swimming, hiking, walking trails there. And there's a 7.5 mile loop that connects the trail and the beach side together. And the Department of Natural Resources is going to oversees the area. Sandy Neck already has an osprey nest, so why should we make another one? Last year, juvenile ospreys took the nest over instead of the mature one, so they weren't able to reproduce. And if another nest were around there, we could increase the return of ospreys. So where will it be installed? That right there is a map of Sandy Neck, and then that little P right there is the parking lot, and diagonal to it is where that arrow is pointing, and that's the general area it will be in.
Yeah, I'm not clear. Can you down the bottom of that? 'Cause can you go
Right
back?
here, you see, this is
Oh, yeah.
the
Okay.
observation,
Okay.
and that's where it's going to go off of there.
So
So it's in that little area where there's a lot of water that sits there, somewhere in that area where the pole's going to be?
It'll be up in a high spot, yeah.
Cool. Off of the marsh.
I guess just keep an eye on the project profile for this. I assume it wouldn't interfere with the,
Right, I mean, if the location were to, we'd certainly pick
Yeah.
one that was,
Yeah.
better, but it shouldn't interfere.
okay.
So this is a proposed location for it, and it links off the parking lot with a wheelchair accessible ramp. And there's an observation platform, which is what I'm standing on in that picture. And it shouldn't interfere with the breeding habits of the birds. Benefit. So the benefit of this project I have chosen is that it will give the birds a safe nesting area. The other benefit is that it will give park visitors the opportunity to watch the ospreys. The osprey pole on the marsh is not visible to the public because it can be hard to get out there. Along with the pole making it easier for people to see the osprey, the informational signage will also educate the people about the osprey and give them a chance to expand their knowledge of them. So that's the plan. It's hard to see from here, but that's like all the different views of the sides and stuff. And if you look at the text, which is hard from the distance I'm at, but you can see like all the numbers and the lengths and stuff. Project timeline. So the initial planning is going to be March 2024, which is now, and it's going to be my proposals as of right now as such, and then also starting the project. And then construction phase is going to be in April 7th, 13th, and 14th. And this can be changed if it's problematic for anything at Sandy Neck. Signage is going to be determined because it's not as important to get up as the actual pole. Final wrap up is going to be like wrapping up my Eagle supportive review and my project. Where am I going to get my support from? So, on the right,
I only see a
That-
couple raising their hands, is that a bit?
so on the right we have my troop, which is where I'm going to get a lot of my support from, along with their parents and from my family. Challenges in the process. So some challenges I thought of were finding a way to dig deep without a lot of sand like falling into the hole, making a way for the signage to be wheelchair accessible, and I thought maybe we could just have 2 signs if that's possible. Assigning jobs for people with different ability levels. I do not really want young kids working with a massive pole. It's not gonna go too well. Disorganization. That's just like making sure we're on task and not goofing off. Materials. So these are the materials I had for the pole, and the sign stuff isn't really on there. It's going to be all pressure treated wood, and the platform is going to be constructed out of the wood. It's not going to be a pallet. It will need to be planted about 4 to 5 feet into the ground to be stable, and the signage frame will be made out of scrap wood from Sandy Neck.
Is that, can I ask you a question about that? How doesn't necessarily really high? If you do it 20 feet, it's 5 feet in the ground, it's 15 feet. It doesn't seem that high.
So the pole that we usually will use, based on Chris Nappy's suggestion, he works with Chris Walls to complete these projects. It's typically about a 16 to a 20-foot pole that they use.
Including what goes in the ground. So
Yes.
So it's only,
Correct. Yeah, it's 15 feet maybe. Yeah.
okay.
So for my supplies, I'm going to use 2 7/8 inch headlock screws, 4 inch headlock screws, and 3 inch external screws. Tools, I'm going to need a sawhorse, a post hole digger, shovels, tamper, level, power drills, a 1/2 inch by 10 inch drill bit, a circular saw, deep socket ratchet set, and adjustable wrenches. I do not know why the circular saw got shifted, but don't worry about it. Additional needs. So some additional needs are going to be transportation of young workers, which can be like carpools, food and drink for workers, printing for signage, which I believe will be covered by Sandy Neck, frame for the signage if there's not enough of the right scrap wood at Sandy Neck. Permits and permission. All necessary permits will be taken care of by Sandy Neck, and all the permission I need is from Sandy Neck. Costs. So they have a educational grant to cover the cost of materials and supplies, and I do not know the cost of signs, but it will be covered by Sandy Neck. I believe I said that already, but I don't know. Materials will cost $163, plus or minus tax and cents. Supplies will cost around $127, plus or minus tax and cents. We will be borrowing tools from family members and troop members. We already have all the tools on the list, so there's no worries there. We will cover the cost of food and drinks for the workers, and I estimate that the overall cost for that will end up being $60 to $80. Logistics. So I believe that the supplies will be delivered to Sandy Neck. The pole will be constructed on site. The pole will be placed at an exact place determined by Sandy Neck. And parents will bring scouts with carpools if needed. Adults will bring and operate their own power tools. Adult troop leadership and Sandy Neck personnel will oversee the project. Food and refreshments will be provided by me and my family members. Power will be supplied by Sandy Neck's Fieldhouse Garage. How many days of work will it take? So it'll be a 3-day process. The first day we will be building and adding the credit guard and the platform. Let me re-say that. The first day we will be bringing the platform, adding the predator guard and the platform in the Sandy Neck Fieldhouse garage, and that will be April 7th if it doesn't contradict with any Sandy Neck's plans. Second day we will go and dig the hole, transport the nest with the pole, and install the pole and stabilizers on April 13th through 14th. And then we will also need 1 day to install the signage. So some extra ideas I had were to possibly put a do not climb sign on the pole, just in case like there's any people that wanted to climb on it. And add a predator guard made with aluminum flashing, which will cost about $100. So what is a predator guard? A predator guard is a flat surface material that will go around the pole, so small animals such as raccoons or mice try to climb it, they will fall off. So right there where I said this is what it looks like, the picture, it has like that little thing on the pole where it's just not the same color. That's the predator guard. Safety issues. So some of my safety concerns are power tools, which will only be used by the adults, like I said earlier. Erosion while we are digging the hole. Lifting the heavy pole. Everyone has to wear safety glasses and gloves while working if necessary. First aid kits will be easily accessible and stationed in multiple places around Sandy Neck. And our general rule of thumb is just to keep everyone there safe. Anybody have questions?
Thank you. You guys have any questions? Yeah, good job. Questions from the board? Questions from the board, anybody?
I just gotta ask it, I'm sorry. So, if you got that sign, do not climb on the pole, doesn't that keep the raccoons and the mice off?
Yeah, only the ones who can
The
read.
reason that we sit together. Talk about whack.
Some of the raccoons can't read.
Oh, okay.
Well, that is an interesting, it's an interesting, in the dunes. Well, if you're in the dunes there, you're already trespassing because you're not on a trail and you shouldn't be there. But I wonder if some symbolic fencing, like maybe 100 feet out, you know,
Yeah,
just like the plover fencing, you know, with some signs.
Yeah, it's definitely
Simple
something
signs,
look at and evaluate
you know,
for sure.
that would be,
Have we ever known anyone to try to climb a Osprey pole?
yeah, you can't really, I mean, they're too high to climb without a ladder, really,
The
but
one that I would assume that they would have
spikes.
tried to climb is the one at the halfway house, and I've
Exactly.
never
I mean, it
seen
can be
it.
really hard to do that.
Yeah.
so there are,
Why not?
I think 3 or 4 active nests out there now.
I know.
There's one out beyond Trail 5,
Point, right,
Lake Muscle Point. That one's been there for
ever,
a
yeah.
long time.
Halfway house.
They actually,
Marsh.
one year they opted not to nest in the nest site. They nested on Jack Lyons' dock, which was interesting.
Gordon,
So do you know what permits you need? Or, I know Sandy Neck's going to take care of it, but
I do not, no.
Conservation Commission?
I was really, really great job, but what I really liked was that you made it handicap accessible.
Yeah.
And that was really one of those kind of very thoughtful considerations so that access is for all. So thank you for doing that.
That's a great location.
really excellent location for people to get a view, and anyone can see it from there, so. Rich, go ahead.
I just have a question. Have
Rich, could you go up to the
Yeah, Rich, you got to come up to the, you should know the drill by now, you know?
Hi, I'm Rich French, and I just have a question. Have you figured out how to take and erect this pole so that using winches and the like?
I think we're just gonna be able to carry it with our shoulders and then lift it up.
Okay.
No.
I had a past student from Sturgis also, who as an Eagle Scout put a pole up at the end of Navigation Avenue. Now, that first winter, we had the very, very high tides and ice, so it didn't last a single year. But what they did, Jack, and it could be helpful, is you'd have your pit, your thing. Now, he dug it in the peat out in the marsh, so he's able to dig a little bit of a trough going into that hole, and then by putting a bunch of lines up high, they laid it down so that the foot of the pole was in the middle of the slot that would go into the hole, and then they jacked it up a little bit, and then they lifted it with some long poles and lots of human power, and it came up, slid in, and then boom, went down and in. I don't know what you're going to do in the sand.
Chris Nappy is pretty well
He's
versed.
good at that? Cool.
Yep, we've done polls before, so
Good.
Jack's, he's going to learn a lot of
Put some
stuff.
sort of a collar there to, like an old, like one of those blue barrels without ends in it. Then you can dig down inside of it.
Keep the sand from going back into it.
Yeah.
Cool. It's a great project.
I think, as Renee said, I think that it's a great project if it was put in the middle of nowhere, but the fact that at that location makes it even a more interesting project because of its accessibility to anybody. Because all of the ones we have out there now, you have to kind of be on the off-road trail, or you have to be on the marsh trail to see them. So this will give a chance for all the people using the Bodfish Park to see them. I think it's going to be a really big attraction, probably.
I've been asking for this for how many years? That's been a goal.
You're going to put your camera on it next? Is
That might happen. I'd love to have an Osprey camera, sure.
No, great project, and you have our full support as a board, and we wish you good luck, and we would like to have you back once it's completed to tell us how it all went, and most importantly, I'm sure you'll get the pole up, but I'm sure you'll learn some things along the way, and that's what makes these projects useful for a young person, is to learn from these projects, so that when you come back, you're going to be a little smarter. You can tell about what went right, what went wrong, and what you'd have done differently, and so we can kind of give you a chance to kind of refresh our memories about the project and also just about what you learned. So,
Thank you very much.
I have one request. So I'm relatively new to the board, and any opportunity that I have to come out and visit, I take it, and I'm always try to make it possible. So when your project is completed, if you'd be so kind to potentially have a ribbon cutting for it, I would greatly appreciate that. And I'll show up.
you could show up earlier and help them with the
I
pole.
was going to say, the board members are welcome as laborers.
So you also have my word that if I can learn something, and I think that's what I love about, there's a lot of math, that it's really applying the things that you're in school by doing. So if you will help me find a day and a time, I definitely will come, observe, and maybe learn a skill. But thanks.
Cool.
Very good. Any other questions before we release Jack?
Just a question, do you have the pamphlet prepared at all? You have a workbook that you have to get a signature from these guys?
Yeah, I already gave it to Hannah.
Okay, and then that needs, there it is. And that needs to go to the council office, and you have to have Dr. Wood's approval before you can begin the project. So we need to get that into the office as quick as possible to give him time to get it approved.
All right.
As Carter is nodding his head, Dr. Wood will call you if he has any questions. The young man over there is Carter Hickey, who
Yep.
his project was with us a couple of years ago. He
Remember that.
built the picnic tables and the water station and the campsites and a bench. And then there was another project where we built 7 more benches, right, from another scout the previous year. I'm going to say that Jack represents the 7th Town of Barnstable Troop 54 Eagle Scout project that's taken place out there in recent history.
Pretty impressive.
That's
yeah.
awesome.
And that right there is the advisor for several of them over there.
What is the age range of your troop?
About like 11 to 17.
You asked a question about the predator guard. Do you need an answer on that? Does someone have an idea of whether, it seems to me like it makes sense. Is that something that you thought was optional or you were thinking about? Or
Yeah, I would like an answer.
I think it's standard, isn't it?
Yeah, they typically have something on them.
Where did that plan come from?
So the plans that were drawn up in the pencil drawing, those were provided to us. Chris Nappy works with Chris Walls, who was with Mass Audubon and has constructed a number of Osprey poles around town. So that's a pretty tried and true plan. So we should be all set with, the materials and everything for that.
can't wait to see it. Good luck. You guys can bail if you want. Wait till you get the pole up before you take a bow. What? Yeah. Okay. Correspondence staff report.
Thank you very much. Good luck with it. Good luck, Jack.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. All right, so for our staff report, I'll try to keep it pretty quick. So just a reminder, all 2023 ORV permits have expired. Currently, the gatehouse is open by appointment only, and the ORV beach hours are still 8 to 4 with no campfires. Currently, we have Sandy Neck seasonal job openings, and they are posted to the town's website. Some of the positions that are open are the gatehouse supervisor, gate attendant, shoreboard monitor, seasonal natural resource officer, facilities maintenance, and beach aid. So after, I believe it may have been the January meeting, discussing the different research permits and researchers that are conducting different experiments on Sandy Neck, we did make some revisions to the permit application. So the first would be a yes or no section for the researchers to indicate if they're willing to come and present to the board on their project during or at the conclusion of it, as well as a request to provide a synopsis at the conclusion of the project that we can share with everyone and put up on the website. So a couple website updates requested by Chris Clark. So the 2023 Cold Stun Sea Turtle Rescue video has been updated, as well as past Sandy Neck newsletters have been archived, so they're available to view still. And we have a wildlife information for the public section, so who to call list. So that's posted in the notice section. And the walks and talks schedule has been posted to the website for this year. So a couple upcoming events. On Friday, we have an AmeriCorps alumni shoreboard fencing event. So we're going to be working with AmeriCorps members from present and past to get some of the shoreboard fencing done along the ORV beach. We're going to have the Marshall repairs next week. So cottage owners and guests should be advised of that. April 6th, we have our MBBA beach cleanup work day from 9 to noon. All are welcome to join. We'll do some more HCP prep, so some more pallets, so bring your muscles. And on April 16th, we'll have our Signs of Spring hike. This year, we're also going to add a couple of events to our list for the year. So the first one's going to be on April 18th. That's an ORV 101 for beginners. This first event is going to be for women only, and then we'll have another one in June, which will be open to all, just for anyone who's interested in coming out, taking a vehicle out there, but maybe is unsure of what the basics are. So we're going to have that, and to register, folks can email the gatehouse.
That's a really cool idea.
Yeah, it is.
So we have the informational meeting coming up on Thursday, the 14th, for the Resiliency Project. So that's at the Harbor View Conference Room at 6 o'clock. Okay, we've had a number of seals up on the beach, so just a reminder to folks, if you do see the seals, if it's at Sandy Neck, give the gatehouse a call and give us the location. If you can't reach anyone at the gatehouse or perhaps at another beach, IFAW, you can call the hotline to report the sighting. Get any details you can as far as location, but make sure to stay 150 feet away and make sure dogs stay leashed. So there's a spot on the beach, if anyone's been out recently, east of Trail 4 that we've kind of been watching. This post has made an appearance a couple of times over the last several years, but this was on January 30th, where we did lose a significant amount of the dune here. And then an update on February 14th where we lost even more of that dune, and it is no longer in the dune at this point.
That post has been back and forth in and out of there for years. So the significance of this, that it has now fallen, is pretty big.
Mm-hmm. All right. So that's it for the staff
That time
report.
period was quite narrow, so the first period, it wasn't even looking like it would fall.
Right.
So in
We were a
that,
little shocked.
and I think
So
I saw that.
it looks like that
I
beam's
did.
probably 20 feet, and it was maybe 4 feet out in the first picture.
Yes.
So it lost 16 feet of supporting dune under it in 2 weeks.
Yep.
Yeah.
It is.
Thank you, Hannah. Okay, I'll do a brief update on the project.
I've got
Sorry,
a couple of questions.
Sure.
First of all, I had an ear infection, so I've got this blockage, and it's very hard for me to hear. So if everybody could speak up. Certain people speak up very well, but some people, it's harder to hear. Question I have, lifeguards, are we going to have lifeguards this year?
I think it's still a little bit too early. I'm not sure at this point. I know that they're trying to do some, different creative recruiting in the town, but I think right now it's a little too early.
Boy, I hope we get them this year. The other question is, when do the plovers typically appear?
So they should be appearing at any time. The earliest I've seen one on Sandy Neck was March 9th in 2020.
Okay.
But they should be appearing at any time. At this point, they're going to be showing up and kind of establishing territories more so than, getting right into full breeding mode. But, they'll get here, they'll start feeding and figuring out where on the beach they want to, claim their territory.
So we have maybe another week or two.
I would think so.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
So it just came to mind when we were talking about the challenge with the lifeguards and the fact that Sandy Neck is shared by both Barnstable and Sandwich. So Barnstable has had a hard time with this really great idea getting it in place for this year, but what John Gleason is working on is offering in the high school a lifeguard licensing certification class that they can take during class. So for Barnstable, it's a little harder because you need access to a pool so that you can get to your certification, whereas Sandwich actually has a pool, and maybe the two teaming. I didn't think of Barnstable and Sandwich because of the cross need, but it really just makes sense to start doing it within the schools so that during the summers when you need your lifeguards, you have the talent.
So how do you move that forward?
So I think that who on your team can I connect to John? Because there's synergy there, and I don't know who, and we could make a call. I don't mind starting the call at Sandwich.
Yeah, Sandwich Recreation would be the place to start.
Okay.
And just set up a meeting and have a dialogue.
Okay, so I'll take that
mean, you
on
have those
to help,
contacts, yeah.
because I just think that, it should not have been so difficult for John Gleason to do it, but Barnstable doesn't have access to their own pool. And just maybe getting the program up and running and seeing the value would help.
Sandwich already doing that? Or-
I don't even know if they're doing it. I just thought when we were thinking, when we were talking, I said, but they don't have the blocker that Barnstable's faced with. They have a pool on site.
And I know the YMCA has done some stuff over time, and they're open to partnerships as well. So the YMCA pool might be a direction to go.
And so that relationship, Barnstable has been working with the Y to try to get access to the pool. So, I mean, it's a pool that's very central and very used, right? For all of its members, the swim team, and now you have a school that needs it. So they've been trying to get the schedule to work.
If you talk to Sandwich and maybe offer to help certify their kids for lifeguard, that might
They might
make
be
it a
able to
little
share.
bit more, cohesive and palatable, because that's a win-win, right?
Because I mean, until just listening to the same need, a solution that has been on the boards for a while, and now we're already approaching summer. So let's see, I'll call the take a few classes over at the Sandwich Recreation and see. And I'll
Okay.
give you a
All right,
report.
yeah, that'd be great.
Do you know if Sandwich offers lifeguard certification?
Not sure.
And there's also the pool up in Orleans, or Eastham, rather. I forget the name of the facility.
Willie,
I wonder if they offer lifeguard certification there, if we should reach out to them.
so what I know of Willie's, they're getting ready to go through a management chain, but that's a pool that the Lower Cape schools use.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it'd be great if you could check that out and, I guess, just contact directly with the Sandy Neck staff on any thoughts you have there. Okay, we're going to try to make this a quick one. I'm just going to give you, there's a public meeting Thursday night on the Resiliency Project. I encourage anyone from the public who's listening to come. I also encourage the board to come, because we're now down to 90% design. Permitting process is roaring ahead. I'm going to go through some of this in a little more detail. But you'll get a lot more detail if you come to the meeting, because I can't go through all the detail tonight because it isn't finalized in terms of all the design stuff. But I'll just take you through a couple of the issues that the team is dealing with. So, refinement of the design. We'll just talk about that. I mean, as I said, it's now been developed to about 90% engineering-wise in terms of the design. They've made some of the later changes that have been made have really related to things like enhancing pedestrian safety, more kind of refinements, improving the traffic flow, and also reducing the amount of impervious area, which it looks like the team has come up with a pretty good solution for the issue of impervious area versus pervious area. So, and it also actually looks like the final designs are looking like they're actually going to have a tighter footprint, so it'll be a little less. We'll have decreased the impacts to previously undisturbed areas. So, in the new design. This whole issue of the spade-foot toad habitat has been, one of the challenges with mitigation issues inherent in that. It looks like there's a possible solution, which I think we might have talked about in the past, which relates to allowing or categorizing some of the property. Maybe, Gordon, you know more about this than I do, but essentially potentially providing some of the property on Sandy Neck to be protected with a conservation protection forever, which then I guess allows that to be at some extent a trade-off for some of the other activities that would happen with the reconfiguration of the beach. Again, and there are other options even other than that, which I'm not going to get into tonight. But if you come to the meeting, you can question the project leaders on this in more detail. But the good news is it looks like that's moving in the right direction in terms of being able to. Obviously, all of this is subject to natural heritage and all the other stakeholders that we have to think about from a permitting standpoint. But, so far, I think I'd say the team is pretty optimistic. So, So next steps, obviously, to refine that 90% design, start to get the more detail and construction specifications. They're planning on filing a notice of intent to the National Heritage, which will be, I think a 30-day review period. They're planning on filing that around 19th, so after the public meeting. Mitigation actions meeting they have with National Heritage following that. They'll then develop a final conservation management plan and the final engineering designs as well towards the end of April. But then there'll be plan is to have a conservation commission meeting April 30th. That's at least the current thinking. So let's see what else. There's a submittal for April 30th for the hearing date for the National Natural Health Program for that permit. So the permits are all kind of moving along. The only one that's kind of sticking out there now that's not as nailed down is the archaeological survey that was required on the beach area at the top of the hill. They did do an initial survey up there. Apparently, they did find some artifacts that were, I think, musket balls. So that's going to potentially entail a deeper dive on the area before they can commit to, go ahead. So that's going to probably take until the end of the summer, based upon what I heard the other day, which potentially has an effect of slowing this project down a little bit. But I think a lot of the work will continue to go parallel to the archaeological study, so we'll hope for a good result there. So, okay, I think that kind of covers the status. Again, anybody who's interested in a lot more detail, I'm sure they'll be able to attend the public meeting on Thursday. Amber will be doing her usual good job, I'm sure, in terms of presenting the more detailed plans. But it looks like we're in reasonably good shape so far, timing-wise. The main thing right now, and the funding is the other thing. The funding is going to be a big challenge. We have a request out to NOAA for a grant, a little less than we thought it was going to be initially, so that's still up in the air. Obviously, CZM, potentially another source of grant funds. And I think there was one other, I can't remember the name of it now. Might have begun with an M or something, but some other organization too. So the funding is, still going to be a big challenge. So, we'll just have to see how that plays out as to whether this is we're able to get the funding. There's only a limited amount of cost that the enterprise account can take on in terms of, amortizing or taking a bond to fund part of the cost. I think the good news is the beach house bond is coming off.
Yep.
So that does give a little bit of flexibility. Plus, as you know, we've been trying to, move our rates up to kind of market level, which is also contributing some funds that we can hopefully use towards the project as well. But the bulk of the cost is going to have to come from grants, from external funding. So don't have any more information on that except where it's all in progress. We'll have to see how it plays out. Any questions on that before we move on?
Do we know
Yeah, Bill.
roughly how far from the edge of what would be the disturbed area to the proposed spot for the new Osprey pole is, feet-wise?
Well, that was what I asked earlier.
I don't know the exact distance, but, if it's going to be too much of a conflict in that proposed area, we can always relocate the, wherever the Osprey pole is going to be.
Push the
But it
pole
is
back a
pretty,
little bit.
it is pretty far back in relation to the existing parking lot, so I can't see that it will interfere. But if needed, we can certainly relocate it.
Because there will be more infrastructure, not only with the lot moving back, but because of that inland side of that bathhouse is going to have some more infrastructure in there too. So we'll just have to see what.
Right, and so that'll be, actually, the pole will be to the north. The access trail is not moving. And then also the pole will be between the access trail and the parking lot, which is coming
Yes,
south.
correct.
Right.
So we know from Dowses Beach that they don't care about proximity to us
Right.
or vehicles or anything. And Coles Beach, I think they miss it if there wasn't traffic going by all the time.
Any other questions about the project that I don't have a final answer on what the parking lot number of parking spaces is likely to end up being. I think there's a little interesting twist to the way the design's going now, which actually might give us a few more spots than we anticipated originally, but I'll have to wait and let Amber answer that question on Thursday. Okay.
Are we still going to be having a meeting with Mark Ells here?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to do that, but I want to do it only at a time when we kind of need him. I think I'm thinking I mean, at the end of the day, the funding discussion is really, kind of the issue with Mark. So what I'm trying to get Nina and her team to work on is what is the maximum amount of money that the enterprise account can fund, because that's kind of a critical thing we need to know. And I think once we kind of know that, and then once we see how this funding's developed a little bit more, then I think maybe it might be time to bring Mark in. But I don't know. I really think we have anything to say to him right now. I don't want to take up his time. But as he said at the time he was here and last year, the competition for capital in the town is heavy. And you got a lot of priorities with water and sewers and 100 other things. So, you're competing for that capital. So it's unlikely the town is going to be a major participant, in funding, but we don't know. So whether they could close a gap if we get close, I mean, I just don't know. It's an unknown at this point. But I think the team is doing, the best they can to get out there and try to access as much as possible all the public funding that's available. So. But you're dealing with states, you're dealing with organizations, you're dealing with federal, it's complicated. Okay. Bill, is there anything else you want to talk about in terms of public outreach? Or when we had to keep the scout projects coming, I mean, that's great.
Jax is the only one that I know of that's in the pipeline. There's another one that's in progress. He's actually doing the work out at YMCA Camp Linden. So they're not all within the town of Barnstable.
Yeah.
But the young man that's doing his project at Linden, his father is the chief financial officer for the Y. So there's that connection there. But
no problem with funding, presumably.
yeah, I don't know how it's being funded.
And Pete, did you have anything else you want to talk about in terms of conservation?
Probably not. The plans for the redevelopment there are going along so smoothly, I'm thinking of retiring shortly.
It's done.
Yeah, well, hopefully we won't just end up with a good plan and no money to put it into place.
Well, but I mean, if we have a good plan and don't have money immediately,
Right.
we hold on to that plan.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's only so much you can do, and then the rest, some of it's out of your hands. And I think that's kind of where we are with the funding, except the team is on it. I know that. So, all right. So we'll move on. You do the wrap up on the deer hunt, and then we're going to talk about policies. We'll try to get that done as quickly as possible.
So I'll just kind of summarize, the main points in the letter, but we received a letter from one of the hunters that participated in the special deer hunt. So from Brian Malone, thank you for continuing to hold a science-based approach to deer management on Sandy Neck by conducting a safe, controlled, and monitored hunt every 2 years. I've participated in the hunt 5 times since its inception. As a retired director of natural resources in Dennis and hunter education, senior instructor of 30 years, I understand the challenges that you face conducting this type of program. The format has basically remained unchanged, but it could be more productive and achieve the reduction goals with some minor changes. Could the board please consider the following changes? So like I said, I'll kind of summarize what the proposed changes were, and then just kind of the staff comments and feedback that we were able to discuss amongst ourselves. So increasing the amount of hunters per day to participate. So we've actually never turned away any hunters who have participated in the meeting. And the amount of hunters per day is determined based on how many participants actually are there for the entire hunt. One of the other things that we do consider is most of our hunters do tend to go to the same area of the park, typically between Trail 4 and Trail 5. So with that limited space, we also have to consider that as far as how many people we're allowing to safely hunt in one area. So the next suggestion was based on the area that's allowed to be hunted, and considering opening it up, the entire beach. So over the past few years, we've seen a large uptick in all user groups. So hikers, a lot of campers, just your backpackers going out to the tent sites. And with the black powder hunt, we already have to close the off-road beach at Trail 2. So, in order to accommodate that black powder hunt. In order to remain consistent with the archery hunt, so we typically have overlap with our pheasant hunt and pheasant stalking, which is between Trail 1 and Trail 2. So in order to kind of keep that in mind and stay consistent, is why we limit the hunt to Trail 2, between Trail 2 and Trail 5. The next point was regarding the days that folks are assigned. Was a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. This is certainly something that we would consider. However, it's not something we really would want to just make a blanket change. I think we'd want other hunter input on this, whether it's sending out a survey or whatever, as a lot of folks, do plan their vacation time based on consecutive days. So again, something we'd certainly consider, but would want, others' input. The next point was regarding a thermal imaging survey conducted by West Barnstable Fire or the police department to get an idea of the population. This is certainly something we can inquire with those departments. It's obviously based on their availability. But the other thing to consider is, we have other areas in town that folks hunt. So, we wouldn't want to necessarily that to be taken as like an advantage, kind of giving folks the heads up, where all the deer might be, because it kind of takes, the whole point out of hunting. And then as far as allowing hunters to go out 1 hour before legal shooting time, this is something we already do. We actually made this change during the 2021 deer hunt. We also allow the hunters to go out, I believe it's the Thursday prior to the hunt, in order to see what's out there and to scout and get their tree stands up. And then regarding the half hour after sunset, so we don't allow any hunting after sunset. So, in order to remain consistent with our other regulations, that's why the deer hunt regulation is also, hunting only until sunset. So again, these are the changes he requested we consider.
Sounds like you've dealt with them all pretty well.
We really wanted to be thoughtful about, what we were considering. We've definitely made a number of changes over the last several years based on hunter input. So, we certainly welcome, any feedback that will help, shape that, that hunt. And, that way the hunters can get the most out of that activity that they're there for.
I think this is one of those, I think this is one of those areas which is so clearly in the realm of the management of the park, decision-making, as opposed to the board, probably. If you guys have different opinions, but you seem to have responded to each of these in a way that seems sensible. So anybody else have any thoughts about that? Or Pete, hunter?
Yeah, I'm a hunter. Not so much for deer, but at one point in my life I did. An hour before legal shooting, so that's probably about an hour and a half before sunrise. And the question I have is, I'm glad you're doing that. It makes a huge difference. But why not an hour and a half or 2 hours before legal shooting time? If you get out there really, really, really early and then you're quiet, it is so much better for a deer hunt. So that extra time ahead of time is a huge benefit.
Right. Well, we think the hour is pretty good. We also have a staffing situation.
Oh, okay.
So when you think about it, this is a free hunt for those participants. It's not a free hunt for Sandy Neck because we do have to staff. I'm there greeting them at 4 o'clock in the morning and making sure
Okay,
they're signed up
that
and
makes
stuff.
sense.
So anything
Okay.
earlier than that might be
A bit problematic.
problematic, yeah.
Sold. Okay, well responded.
Any other thoughts?
Can I ask you,
Sure.
how many hunters do we get during the hunting season?
That's a good question. So it definitely varies from year to year. So for the black powder hunt, we had, I believe it was 40 hunters. So we had 20 each half of the week. And then archery, I believe, was only about 6 participants. So they were able to
How
hunt.
many?
6.
6.
So they were able to hunt that whole week. And then obviously we have pheasant hunters, coyote hunters, duck hunters. We certainly have, the folks that are regularly out there. But, every so often we'll get, folks from New Bedford. So I don't have the exact number, but at least for the deer hunt, we had about 46 people this year.
And how many deer are actually taken?
So there was one taken this year. Last hunt, I think it was like 7 or 8. So it really depends on the year.
You only had 1 deer with 40 hunters? So there aren't many deer out there.
There's a lot of
deer
signs
out
of
there.
deer out there, and there are a lot of deer. We see them on a pretty regular basis. I don't know if you had more you wanted to add.
Yeah, what it comes down to is pressure, okay? There was a shotgun deer hunt, maybe 2, in the late 80s. Newt Silva, that was on this board for a long time, was part of that. And I believe the number was 50 hunters that they allowed. And they took 12 to 14 deer, I believe, in 1 or 2 years right there. There's the reason that the numbers are low is if you're cutting, so there's 40 hunters signed up. So 40, the number 40 is a little misleading because 40 people signed up. Okay, so I signed up. Okay, so I work 2 days out of the 6 days. So there's, even though I might be there, told I could be there those 3 days, I'm probably working one of those days. So, and there are a lot of people that don't hunt the full 3 days. And in an environment like Sandy Neck, they could be hiding in that corner and you could walk by them, and you do walk by them, and they know you're there, but you don't know they're there. So it's pressure that gets them to move. And you're not going to, unless you can find the balance between a few more hunters to allow the pressure versus keeping at a safe number. And I think we've been wise to go with the black powder versus doing it, opening up the shotgun. You get, this is a technical term, but you get less yahoos in the black powder because those people have had to, it's a skill, and they're pretty much experienced hunters, as opposed to a new hunter can go and buy a shotgun and be out there right next to you. So I think that's a wise decision, but the balance, it's a hard balance. The balance, between the number of hunters. If you had more hunters, if you could say there were 30 or hunters or 40 hunters out there on a day, I think you would see the numbers go up because there would be pressure. People would be moving through areas. They'd be a little disturbed, and they would be moving. Otherwise, unless it's particularly cold, they don't have any reason to move. Unless you pressure them.
And what do you mean, just help me with the terminology, when you pressure them, that means that
It means they move. If 6 of us walked through the woods where they were,
they see,
they would have to move.
so the numbers make them more aware of the impact. So one person there, they can stay still, they don't have as big of a threat.
Right. I mean,
Pressure means
my family has a history of, we have a property out there, so I have the advantage of knowing from the time I was 10 where they go. And even with that as an advantage, I'm not always successful. I have my spot, and if there was pressure over there to get the deer to move, maybe they come by my spot, maybe they don't. So and that's why they call it hunting. So, but it is pressure. You have to find that balance between enough hunters to get the deer to move and safety. So that's a challenge.
Do we have any idea how many deer are out there during hunting season typically?
I mean, that population can certainly fluctuate. I don't think we have, a definitive number, but we certainly see them go back and forth between the marsh, to the mainland. I mean, it's certainly a challenge without, being able to walk the whole area to get the number, but, we have a lot of ticks out there, and, they're kind of a safety hazard in order to conduct that kind of, count. But we see them pretty regularly when staff is out patrolling. So there's certainly a healthy population out there and lots of signs of deer, but I wouldn't say we have like an accurate number on that.
And it's also fluid. They don't live their lives on Sandy Neck. Some of them maybe do, but a lot of them go back and forth,
Right.
depending on food, depending on available breeding partners, all those kinds of things.
I have another very basic question. I love this. Are they, I know different animals, they're tracked? So are deer ever tracked where there's a device?
Not anymore. There was some science out there where there was some radio collaring of the deer. So
Oh, yeah,
that
right.
was quite a while ago.
That was in the 70s and 80s.
But there hasn't been the tracking of the deer since then, in terms of radio collars or something like that.
Okay, is there anything,
Just a question,
Sure.
general question. Are people hunting deer for sport, or are they hunting deer for food?
Food.
For food.
Nobody just hunts to kill an animal. You're not allowed to hunt and just kill an animal. It's called wanton waste, and it's a felony. So we did have, and we've had incidents out there of hunters that have done things they shouldn't have, and they pay the price. So no one hunts just to kill. They hunt to feed their family, to supplement their family, feeding their family. So it's not just trophy hunting, and most of the things you get out there are not big bucks. It's more population control than anything else.
It just seems to me that if you're hunting for food, you're totally wasting your time at Sandy Neck. I mean, there's not enough deer.
I've
far
killed
as I can
three.
see, compared
In my
to
lifetime,
other
I've killed
places you can go.
4 deer on Sandy Neck.
What?
I've killed 4 deer in my lifetime on Sandy Neck, during these
Over a
hunts.
period of how long?
25, 30 years.
Yeah, I think if you were really hunting for food, you'd be,
Yeah, but there's a
You'd head
season.
north.
There's also a season. It's not like you can do this all year long.
That's pretty funny, because
Yeah.
I hunt in Massachusetts, I hunt in Maine. I have killed 1 deer in Maine in the last 23 years. Okay? And that's the hunt. You enjoy that hunt.
He had fun doing it.
Myself and my hunting partners, we want to hunt, we go to Maine. We want to fill the freezer,
Sandy Neck.
we go to Sandy Neck. We actually hunt Nantucket. And
Oh, my God, yeah, you and I have talked.
And I've shared some experience with these guys about there's a controlled hunt that I participate in on
Nantucket.
Cotu, which is a Sandy Neck equivalent on Nantucket. The things that are done over there, in the 3-day hunt we did over there this year, we took 36 deer out of an area roughly twice the size of Sandy Neck. A lot of that wouldn't translate well to Sandy Neck. Some of it might.
But there's a huge overpopulation of deer
Yeah,
on Nantucket.
and,
They have to be culled for
so-
the health of the ecosystem.
I grew up in New Jersey, and they're like rats down there.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had any number of friends, including one of my sisters, who's totaled their car. There's deer all over the place. They defoliate your property. It's
There's a
unbelievable.
little highway in New Jersey, in the northern part. that-
Just unbelievable down there. And of course, there's a lot of people that prevent the hunts, so the deer are not getting thinned out. It's a whole.
Yeah, Massachusetts is definitely, in the New England states, that's where the overpopulation of deer is in Massachusetts.
Hannah, I assume that you guys have markers that you look for, like if the deer population was either over or under, without actually knowing those numbers, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it really is. It's just going to be signs, whether it's the track or, areas that they might be bedding down, rub marks on trees. So we just look for the signs of them, without getting a count.
And the state actually publishes a deer density map every year. And they're looking for a deer per square mile. They're saying that roughly 10 to 12 deer is per square mile is to maintain a healthy population, you want about 10 to 12 deer. And Cape Cod has a density population of something like 35 to 50. Per square mile, when you look at that. Nantucket has a population of like 100 per square mile. So,
Yeah.
A lot of food potential there, though.
There's a lot of science involved in that, and it's the state does a lot of research on the numbers, and they track. They take samples during the first week in shotgun season. They take a lot of samples that helps them to understand the aging of the population and all of that. So.
And the health of that population.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anything you need from the board on this? Because it sounds like this is really an operational issue. I think you guys are
This is something
on
that
top of it.
when a patron
Yeah.
brings something to us, we just, need a moment of discussion.
Yeah,
And,
seems like you have it under control.
we've all talked about it and, have been there long enough to know about the hunt and what we could do and what we couldn't do, so.
My sense of the comments is that we're all pretty much in agreement with what is currently going on. Makes sense, the way you're addressing it now.
There's always going to be some tweaks. We have to see what happens,
right.
and then you tweak accordingly.
Right.
I always like to tell one of my favorite stories about being on the Recreation Commission for the number of years I've been on it, is it took one letter, and it was a letter from a physician, and he talked about the dangers of cigarette butts on the beach. And because of that, Barnstable was the first town to go through all the process of hearing from the community to have smoke-free beaches. And it was a very thoughtful effort for both people that smoked and people that didn't. And it was a great experience to go through, and it took one letter from one, concerned person. So sometimes you get those gems.
Yeah, well, I think that, I absolutely agree. You want feedback. You like people that participate. Obviously, Brian wrote a very thoughtful letter, and somebody with a lot of experience, so we certainly appreciate the suggestions, and I'm sure I know the team's taken them on board, so in the end, it may influence how they're doing things out there at some point, so that's great. Okay, we ready to move on to the policies?
Yes.
This is our final.
Go through to the updates. So the first proposed policy update is in regard to the minimum 1-year property lease. So the addition is this section here. So in the event that the town has reason to believe that an individual providing a property lease as proof of residency does not reside in Barnstable, 2 forms of proof may be required. The following items will be accepted for the second form of proof: appearance on the Barnstable census for 2 consecutive years, or an auto excise tax bill with a Barnstable address, or a water bill for residential dwelling in Barnstable, or a valid driver's license with a Barnstable address. The next proposed change.
Actually, I have a
Sure.
question. It seems like there's some redundancy in what you're adding to the previous page, section 4. It'd be helpful if you put page numbers on this, but the previous page, proof of residency. So isn't what you're adding there already kind of included already under section 4?
So this is just an addition to section 4, and it's in regard to the minimum 1-year property lease. So every so often we'll come across an application for an off-road vehicle permit that is for a resident, but there's no other like indicator, like they might have a lease that they provide, but there's really no other indicator that they may actually be a town resident. So this would just require them, if, you know, we believe that they are not in fact a resident, to just provide another supporting document to further prove that residency. You know, that way someone who's a non-resident isn't getting resident prices for their permits.
Doesn't a current and unexpired driver's license cover almost everything here?
So it's just different options for them. Maybe they don't have, you know, a driver's license with a Barnstable address, but, you know, they've got the water bill, you know, with their resident, for, you know, their resident additional.
When I read, I just found it rather confusing. I think that whole section needs to be redone. I think there's too much redundancy. It's really hard to follow.
Looks good to me.
So this is wording that we had actually used from another town's like beach, like their sticker policy.
Just giving,
for
it's
resident
just
price.
giving you some teeth, that's all.
Yeah, just so like, again, you know, we can ensure that all people getting a resident permit are in fact Barnstable
And
residents.
that's, you're not gonna, you're gonna have a couple of those every year. You're not gonna have a lot of people that are gonna have
And
that.
sure, you guys have to make that judgment, so.
I would think that you could, you know, indicate very succinctly what it is that would be required, like a driver's license, for example, or a lease for 1 year, and then have a catch-all phrase that basically says it's up to the manager or the assistant manager or the operations manager to make the final determination on the documentation that's given to you. And just leave it simply at that.
You don't give someone a sticker on the basis of the judgment of the park manager. Then you get a lawsuit for someone
Being very
saying,
prejudiced.
you should have had a more
prejudicial on that.
specific set of requirements documented to, you know, to lay out what the requirements are. I think it's fine. I don't see any issues.
I just found it hard to read, to understand. I thought it was a bit confusing. I think it should be reworded.
So when are the extra?
Need an English lit or a teacher. Teachers are always good at writing.
We're only talking about a second layer of requirement here. And in that second layer of requirement, it's one of those things that are in red. It doesn't have to be all of them. It could be one of those. So in
It's only
addition to a lease.
Sorry, to answer her question as well, is if they do not have, if the lease, if you're questioning
Yes.
the validity of the lease, that is when.
Like, for example, a lease is provided to us, you know, a resident lease for the town of Barnstable, but they attached their license and they attached their registration, but neither of them are Barnstable addresses. You know, that would just be that extra layer to validate that they are in fact residing in the town of Barnstable.
I actually have family members that moved from Sandwich to Barnstable and actually struggled with this very issue just because they weren't able to, they had not changed over everything and stuff, okay? So actually having it spelled out, okay, is very handy, all right, and would help. And it was just a matter of, you know, they're young, they haven't updated their license, or, you know, to answer your question, when a license just suffice, not everybody is as diligent as they should be about changing their address on their license.
In their 5 years. they
Yes,
still-
yes,
Well, license could be for Florida. I mean,
Yeah.
so it would be a Massachusetts. Okay, why don't we move on?
Okay, so the next proposed was under section 5 for off-road vehicle permits. So any permit holder caught tampering with their ORV permit and or the attached RFID tag may have their ORV permit revoked. Okay, the next proposed change is under section 6 regarding the off-road vehicle beach. So 6 2, stuck vehicles. Any vehicle permitted or non-permitted that is stuck on the off-road vehicle beach, included in the access trail, is subject to being towed at the operator's expense and may be subject to fines. The operator of a stuck vehicle will be given 15 minutes to attempt to free their vehicle from the sand before the determination for tow is made at the discretion of the park manager or natural resource officer on duty, or any other employee designated by the town manager to enforce the regulations at Sandy Neck. 6.3, air compressors. It is recommended that all ORVs are equipped with a personal portable compressor, as use of the complimentary Sandy Neck compressor is not guaranteed even during peak times.
Can we go to 7.1, which you're not making any changes to it, but you've got, in that paragraph, you've got including stepson and/or stepdaughter. Can you change that to step relatives and also add step or adoptive relatives? So
You don't need
it's more
adoptive.
inclusive.
If they're adopted,
If-
they're part of your family
I
already.
have an adopted daughter. She's my daughter. It doesn't matter if she's adopted or not.
So like stepmother, stepfather, is that what you're?
Yeah. I think you're missing a bunch of steps if you don't put in step relatives. And I don't know if it's clear, if it's adopted. You know, so,
Your cousin wouldn't qualify, I mean,
Step relative is a bit too vague.
Including
Yeah.
step relatives.
you got your stepfather, stepmother, stepuncle.
Uncles wouldn't be in there.
Right.
You're talking immediate family here. That's fine the way it is.
I think the only other one that would qualify would be a step-parent.
Yeah, the others wouldn't qualify.
Why don't you guys talk it over and decide what you think makes sense?
Okay.
I'm just gonna make a note of that.
Isn't that existing?
This is existing,
This is
yeah.
existing.
That's what
That's the way
it
it
is,
goes.
that's what it is
Yeah.
now.
That's fine.
Bill was just proposing a change to the current language.
Okay, so the next proposed change, 7.5, regarding marsh trail access. Property owners and their guests shall not block access to the marsh trail or any cross trail. Driving through the marsh to bypass sections of the trail is prohibited.
Yeah, it's also, should be fined.
All right, and that is the end of the proposed policy changes.
Okay, any discussion on the proposals, other than ones we've had already?
Do you need a,
We need to vote on these.
you need a motion?
Yeah, there's no
I sort of
other,
have a question.
Yeah.
It was raised by sort of this driving off the ORV trail onto a marsh, you know, and that's never allowed, is it? Driving, you know, driving actually on peat or?
No, but what happens is when, when the marsh trail gets flooded,
Yeah.
and then it looks like onto the right of that is nice and just grassy, even though it's marsh. Some folks were making their own pathway there, which of course destroys the marsh and not a good plan. And then again, you don't know what's under that peat, right? If it's mushy or whatever, you could get surcharged. So that's what, when Hannah was writing these down and stuff, that was one of the things we want to avoid. It's just like we tell hikers, you got to stay on marked trails, you don't make your own. It's the same thing with the marsh trail.
So-
Stay on the marked where you're supposed to.
Does that have the potential to be fined then too?
That's what I was thinking. So when you want it, is finding it a deterrent or not necessary?
you have to
It's a
catch on.
policy, it usually requires, we're talking property owners, we're talking cottage owners and stuff. It's not in our habit.
They know better.
It's not in our habit to find them.
That makes sense.
But there is a stern talking to.
Well, and you can also,
If it's repeated.
you can also lose your permit,
Yeah. Correct.
if you are repeatedly
Right.
violating policies, you
We
can,
just want, just to spell it out a little bit better,
yeah. That's why that, the immediate family members' stuff needs to be in there and be fairly explicit, because you do have, folks that tell these people, oh, my aunt said it was okay that I go out there and ride around, and like, well, you don't have the, no, it's not, so, I mean, the property owner has to, as a property owner, I have to take responsibility for the people that I'm allowing to go out there. And, it's just, oh, they're, my aunt said I could go out, no, sorry. If she wrote it down, that's one thing,
You've met some of these people.
There are, yes.
These policy changes oftentimes will come from experience. They don't just make them up. So.
Come on.
Exactly. Just let it go.
Let's, if there's no further discussion on the policy proposed changes, can someone make a motion to accept the policy changes as written for 2024?
I'll make a motion to accept them as written.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. You're voting.
Opposed. I mean, I understand, I couldn't hear everything that was being said, that you're not changing the step section at all.
Oh, was that under?
You're just leaving it stepdaughter and stepson.
I think not at this time. We'd have to have further
Yeah.
discussion down the road. That's been in place for a really long time. We'll have to talk about it to the powers that be also, so.
Yeah.
But for the changes that we need to make, that we made, that's what this vote is about.
That would be a lawyer question, I think.
I think you could be right on that.
Any public comment? Nope. Rich?
I am. The only reason I'm commenting this evening is very simple. I'm Rich French, and I want to say, since Bill Monroe has been on this board, he has had the Boy Scouts and all of the friends of the Scouts helping out keep Sandy Neck really pristine. So I think Bill Monroe has I take my hat off to you. So I think he's done a great job.
You're the one that got me in this here. You know that.
Everything can be traced back to Rich, I think, pretty much. Okay. Nothing from me in terms of matters unreasonably anticipated, so we'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.